Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's Johnny King with another amazing episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. I have an awesome guest in the house, Chris Bello. What's up, man? How are you?
What's up, Johnny? I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited to chat about things that I like to geek out about because you geek out about the same thing, which for a lot of guys, I feel like around the topics of productivity and making sure that we're getting shit done is a very masculine trait.
Yes, checklists.
Yes, of course, women and men, we all like to get stuff done, but it is very much that expression of the masculine, which is like, yeah, providing, checking things off your list, everything else. But why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? I could read your bio, of course, and being a real estate expert, and you're as well as the host of the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. But give the guys a little bit more of a context as to who you are and where you live and what you've got going on in your life right now and all the good stuff.
Absolutely. So like we talked about when we got a chance to connect recently, my fiance and I actually just moved to Denver about a year ago from the Houston, Texas area, just because of a change of scenery. It's kind of funny because everyone's like, did you move out here for work? And I'm like, actually, I'm doing virtual real estate. So I still have clients back in Texas mostly, but I wanted to create my business in a way where I can go travel anywhere, live a life by design, live life on my own terms type of thing. So I think like a lot of your listeners can probably relate. I did the whole corporate route, get a job, wear the button down shirt and a tie or whatever. Nothing ever fit. I never felt comfortable because I never wear that stuff. And it just felt like I wasn't fitting in. I'm like, man, I don't want to be here. I can't play this corporate game for that long. And then, I go play screamo or heavy metal on the way home. And I'm like, none of these people realize the kind of crazy music that I like to listen to and the stuff that I like to do on my free time. And so I finally broke off and I did my own thing. I got into real estate, left the oil and gas world behind, the corporate world. And just right now, just living the life of play, trying to pursue my passions. I got a snowboard in the corner, unlimited epic ski pass, and just kind of living it one day at a time, enjoying my life. And so that's a little bit more about me outside of just the real estate and the podcast.
Yeah, I like that because I think you touch on a point that I think precedes the productivity, the getting stuff done, because I do feel like a lot of guys that I run into and probably listen to this podcast, men and women for that matter, don't feel like they have a whole lot of clarity or they're not in integrity with what it is that they ultimately value in life. And when that's the case, then no matter how many hacks and tips and tricks you can give someone, they just might not feel like they're all that motivated. And that has more to do with, I think, to your point, like you made a move, I made a move too, to like be in alignment with
that's
what it is that makes you happy, right?
Absolutely. Alignment, because that's what I share in my story is I was doing what everyone around me was doing, right? My parents sent me to a Catholic school, and then I went to a college prep Jesuit school. A lot of my friends from there went to Texas A&M University. So I'm like, well, I got 30 friends going there. I might as well just follow them. And I never really stopped to think, what do I actually enjoy and what do I want to do? I just looked around. I'm like, well, all my smart friends are doing this. I should follow along. And then a couple of years in, I'm like, screw this. Like, how do I live life on my own terms? And how do I live a life outside the cubicle? Because I was kind of over it and I didn't see myself there, doing those things, going through those motions long term. And I love that word that you said, alignment. That is 100% right. But you have to tune into who you are to even know what to align with.
Tune into who you are or in another way, like figure out who you are.
Figure it out.
I tell a lot of my clients who are in their 20s, like, dude, take that decade and just try as much shit as possible because you got time on your side.
Yes.
Take the bigger risks, go travel, date the people, like do as much as you can. Because I think in your 20s, you really start to hone in. Gosh, obviously between 10 and 20, you're going through puberty and you're stepping into a whole new like perspective of life from a child to adolescent.
That's a big change.
Adult,
10
right?
to 20.
But then in your 20s, right? In your 20s, it's like, okay, figure out who you are in many regards. And even still, I think in your 30s, I feel like that whole decade is really more focused on, okay, starting to refine. Am I, what do I like and what do I like? And I, who I want to hang out with and surround myself with. I think that's a big part of it. And then I saw a meme not too long ago that said something like, I wish someone would have told me that life actually begins at 40 when we figured things out,
Cool. Cause I'm still trying to get there. I just turned 31 last year. So I got a ways to go till 40.
Well, and if you're figuring things out, then you're ahead of the game. But I definitely felt like that was kind of the case. But to your point, I feel like if it makes you happy, it doesn't need to make sense to anyone else.
Exactly.
I do feel like we have that freedom now with technology and everything else. We're like, shit, if you don't want to work from a cubicle, then
you want to
go live and work from Tulum, go fucking do it. Like whatever. Right.
Right.
So tell a little bit more about that, even stepping your way back into like, what were you up against when, like, to what your story was already kind of coming across in terms of just sitting in your cubicle, maybe just checking in, checking out, and then not feeling like you are the same person at work versus the person that's already on his drive home or showing up. How did you even keep the relationship going too, when you felt like you were maybe out of alignment?
Yeah. So the alignment thing is huge. I mean, I was kind of, I guess, lying to myself, or to answer your point earlier, I hadn't even asked myself who I want to be or who I am. I hadn't done the work of figuring that out. Right. So again, I was just following along, and all my quote unquote smart friends that I went to school with, they all did this same thing. I didn't really have a whole lot of entrepreneurial friends that broke the mold. Right. We were all plugged into the matrix type thing. Oh, that person's going to Columbia and then they're doing consulting. That person got into Harvard Business School and now they're working at, Google or whatever. So I saw those things, and I felt like that's where I had to follow suit. But I definitely did not feel like I was in alignment. I've always been like the wear workout clothes or have skateboard shoes in middle school type thing. And now all of a sudden I'm dressing up in business casual and occasionally putting on suits to present to executives. And I just felt a little out of place, right? Like I had to cut my hair a certain way and kind of play by the rules and speak eloquently and all those things. And so it wasn't until I started to realize, like, hey, there's people that I follow and there's audiobooks I'm listening to. Like 4 Hour Workweek was very transformative for me. I started listening to these podcasts in my cubicle, because for those listening, and things are different now here in 2022, a lot of people are working remotely, but a lot of people have started to go back into the office, right? When you're sitting there and you're there, it's not even a 9 to 5. It's really like an 8 to 5, right? Plus you get an hour of lunch.
Yeah.
It is a long day, a long work week. And you're just looking at the clock like, oh my gosh, it's only 11 a.m. and I got to stay here. Got a meeting at 4 p.m. And it's not until you start to ask those questions of like, what could life look like? How can I design my life? How do I make money outside of a job where I get a paycheck every 2 weeks? Right. And so I started to move closer as I asked these questions to that ideal version of myself, which again, I didn't know. I had to kind of define it, pick it, and just, how do I do step by step, bridge the gap between where I am and where I want to be?
So if I hear you correctly, a big part of it, and that was going to be another question that I had, which is like, how did you actually get there? How did you figure out what was your values? How did you get in alignment with yourself? It sounds like a lot of the kind of the personal growth, the podcast, the books, the people that you follow kind of helped maybe trigger some of those deeper questions, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Because as I've mentioned like before, the people you surround yourself with, if that's all you see, that's all you think is possible, right? We hear the stories of people who grow up in a rough area, and you think of like the biggest number they can think of. They're like, if I had a magic lamp, I would wish for $1 million, because they've never seen anything around them like that shows different. They could have $1 billion, but just they can't fathom it, right? I think Tom Billiard talks about this number, how he'd ask, if you could have any wish in the world, what would it be? And everyone in that area would just say $1 million. Like that was the cap on their dreams. But as I started to listen to podcasts and surround myself with different people and go to startup events and talk to like tech founders, I got very plugged into that, where I'm like, oh my gosh, this company raised this much money. That person's been working from Bali for like the last 2 years, making 10K plus a month, 6 figures a year, and living in a place where it's astronomically cheaper than the US. Yeah. So that started to open my mind. Like, hey, how did you do that? When did you quit? Did you have money on the side before you quit, or did you just quit and figure it out? Right. And of course I started to chart my own path, but the short answer is surround yourself with the people who are where you want to be. And they'll also show to you what's possible, because you're like physically seeing them do it. And you're like, well, they did it, I can do it too.
Totally. But I think the biggest part that you did there was you had the humility to ask the questions.
You have to. You can't act like you know it all. Otherwise, if you try to act like you know it all, you'll never really learn.
Right. And I think, take the example of walking into the gym. You could certainly just watch people and see what they're doing and learn through, osmosis, just by watching them. But you can speed up time so much faster to listen to a podcast or to go actually ask a person who has similar results in some area of your life, obviously. Right.
Exactly.
So the fundamentals are not all that challenging to comprehend and make sense of. But a lot of times it's more of our ego or insecurity, really, right, that keeps us scared to actually ask the question or to actually leave a job, or to your point, like leave a state, go try something new, right?
Right.
So what brought you into real estate of all things?
So real estate was one of those things. This is kind of a funny part of the story. So I had the part of my career or story where I quit my job and I freaked out a little bit. I tried some stuff, tried to invent something. I kind of blew through a lot of my savings. I think it was like 40 grand I invested in an invention product, and I had about 60,000 saved. Plus I already had the expectation of living the life that I like, right? I didn't have to worry about bills or expenses because I was making more than I was spending. And now it had been like 6-7 months where I'm like, crap, I'm not really making money. I just wired 30K to this supplier to manufacture this thing. And I was starting to see like the numbers weren't working out well. So there was a little part of my story that I don't often share because I'm like, it's so short, it doesn't even really count. But I did kind of panic and I applied to get an oil and gas job again. Got hired fairly quickly. I'm good at faking my way through reviews or interviews, right? I'm like happy. Oh, I'm so excited. Can't wait to make all this impact. And then a weekend after I got the job, I'm like, why did I do this to myself? I'm back in the freaking cubicle talking about all these things that I don't care about. I actually got fired from that job. I've never been fired. I'm like, college educated, smart, great work ethic, at least so I'm told. And 4 months in, I get fired from this job because I'm just disconnected, disengaged, and I'm already focusing on my own stuff, my podcast, my blog posts. Wasn't making any money, but I was already working on those things. And so when I got fired from that job, I was like, that was my wake up call to like, Chris, you can never go back into this because you're not passionate about it. And life is too short to try to like chase the salary, right? I was enamored by $70,000, $80,000 salary with potential for more, 6 figures and all that. And within the 2 weeks of vacation, all the downsides and having to commute an hour each way, those were the things that were like, you know what, I'm just going to try real estate. And I was hesitant, right? Because I felt invested. It's that sunk cost fallacy. I went to university. I studied supply chain. I have a job in supply chain. This is where I'm supposed to be. I already spent all these years studying it. I don't know anything about real estate. But like you said earlier, it took being humble to an extent and realizing like, I'm going to have that learner's mindset and be a beginner again. And that's when I got into real estate. I actually reached out to a few people who owned a real estate investment company, and I kind of got started with them. I took a job in a way, but not for a corporation. It was like a 10-person team. The 2 owners were in their 30s, and it was a really fun work environment.
You hit upon so many good nuggets there. I hope people are listening, because to me, I'm here like, first and foremost, I have to commend you just even sharing that part of your story, because I do feel like a lot of people will kind of like want to keep it like, oh, it just was awesome.
It was great. But, there were some ups and downs, man.
Oh, 100%. And I share that on my own story and on this podcast, obviously at different times where, man, the allure of the adventure, the allure of the risk, the allure of, can a lot of times break us free from our kind of what's sort of addiction to the paycheck and the certainty and the stability, right? So we go.
It's hard to leave sometimes.
The adventure, right? But then you leave and you do it, but then sometimes it gets really, really scary, and there's more uncertainty than we can emotionally kind of handle, right? So then I can't tell you how many times I've had a filled out application sitting on the chair next to me as I'm driving, and I'm looking at it like,
no, I can't do it.
No. And you just know that you're going to go back and it's going to feel great for like weeks or months getting that paycheck. And then you're going to be dead again, and I feel like too 100%. Many guys, you and I both experience that sense of like emotional numbness or sedation where you're like, this is not what I was put on this planet to do. The other point that you made that I thought was really, really good is, but it's so tricky because we're like, oh, but I've invested this much education or experience and time. That's just the ego trying to keep you safe or trying to keep you wrapped up in something that, is worthwhile. Yes. Man, like I think it's good that you just ripped off the Band-Aid, you reached out to people, you got into stuff that you enjoy doing, and you love real estate, I assume.
Yeah, real estate's been fun. The thrill of the hunt, the thrill of the chase, closing deals, sales, and all of that. But also just talking to people. Like, that's a lot of real estate, whether you're in the investment side or as a real estate agent. Talking to people is a lot of it, which I love to do. I clearly have the podcast, like over 320 episodes. I can't remember how many I've done. So I talk to people very frequently at the gym, at the sports recovery place, like at the line at the grocery store. I don't have any trouble talking to people, which works really well for real estate, because you've got to, sometimes the joke is like, you're almost like a therapist in a way. And of course, I'm not licensed or anything, but that's the joke you see in the real estate forums, because people are making the biggest financial decision in many cases. There's worry, there's stress, there's anxiety. First-time home buyers freaking out when they see the inspection report, or a motivated seller who's 3 months behind on their payments and they don't want to sell. And you're like, you kind of have to, because you're about to lose your house and not get any money. Whereas this offer allows you to get $30,000, be done with this and not ruin your credit type thing. Right. So it has been very fun, but it also has presented more challenges and the uncertainty, like you mentioned. I never know when that next deal is going to pop up. So I'm like, man, I got nothing in the pipeline, but I know something could come in today and 3 weeks later, 10K commission, 15K commission. Right. So the uncertainty is a blessing and a curse, because some of it's like your stomach's in a knot, but it also is like that roller coaster where after you get off, you're like, okay, that was a little bit fun. It was a little bit scary, but I would do it again, Yeah.
Well, again, you can obviously manage the uncertainty well, and some people, probably aren't quite there, but it also, goes to the point that you found something that you were already inherently good at in terms of just interacting with people. Maybe you're an extrovert, you're curious, you like having conversations, whereas then there might be other people that real estate doesn't suit them, so you got to find whatever obviously is an alignment, going back to that whole
alignment's big
thing
for sure.
So you work with clients buying and selling?
Yeah, I primarily work with clients buying and selling. I started off working a lot with investors. And so when I got my real estate license, that kind of was my specialty, but I have moved on to also accepting retail clients, buying that dream home, the new build, that kind of thing. But I also see myself as more of a connector, because again, I'm licensed in Texas. I just moved to Denver. I still have clients in Houston, but I'm also helping people vet and connect with realtors across the nation, which enables me to play this like referral commission game. I can help someone who wants to buy a house in Seattle find a realtor. That realtor helps them find the house, and I can get a referral commission that way. Technically, I'm making my money through Texas as if I never left, but physically, I'm just living in Denver.
Cool. Beyond that, talking more about the entrepreneurial game and outside of helping clients buy and sell, what's your focus over the next, let's say, 3, 5, 10 years as it relates to real estate? And are you even personally playing in that game, in terms of creating long-term wealth?
Yeah. So for real estate, I've been more on the agent side, helping clients. I had a house in Houston, did a live-in flip in a way, bought it, renovated it, sold it, made a profit. We sold it obviously right before moving down here from the Houston area. But of course, that's the plan, is to get more into the buy and hold game. There's a strategy called wholesaling, which is basically those signs you see on the side of the street. We buy houses cash as is. Most of the time, those people don't really buy the houses. They find the house deals with the sellers. They find the buyers. So they call that kind of investing, but it's not really holding onto the properties. It's just flipping it real quick and it's almost like being a real estate agent, where it's a wholesale fee instead of a commission. So that's kind of the area that I've played in. I haven't really bought and hold properties aggressively just yet. So that is the plan, is to continue to generate active income, pour it into investments that, of course, spit out passive income. Because just because you earn 6 figures actively doesn't mean that's a totally different thing than having that mailbox money come in every month, whether you work or not.
Right. And I do feel like that's a lot of the personal finance podcasts that I listen to.
They talk about getting real estate.
Yeah, real estate's one of them, or living off the 4% rule, where you have, let's say $1.5 million, because you've spent your 20s making coin, but really living frugally, right? And then just living off of your investments in that regard. So whether it be real estate or the market, it could be crypto now, it could be like so many different things. There's a lot of things that I dabble in too. It's just, I'm always kind of curious to hear what people are up doing, if they're doing anything. I do more of the short-term rentals. So
okay.
I've got,
Airbnbs.
3 or 4 Airbnbs, and that's been nice, but you just never know how, that might be great for a little while, and things have to shift. Right. So,
right. So I guess I've been mostly interested in what I love about wholesaling and being a real estate agent. Like, it's low risk, but pretty high reward opportunity. Yeah. Like, if something happens, if the market shifts a little bit, if there's vacancies in a certain area, if I get a property and I'm like, man, no one wants to live here, I don't have to necessarily worry about that, because I'm like, I can still pull in a 30, 40K month off of commissions. And if the deals don't close, the worst case is maybe I get one less commission that month, right? But I don't have like expenses or overhead, because I'm not spending 30K a month on properties or on marketing or things like that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, shifting gears a little bit just towards more dialing in your life and your day-to-day activities. What are some of your bigger tips or tricks that you've kind of learned over the years that really has helped you stay focused and fulfilled, happy, balanced, between work and play, relationships, health?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many things there. It all starts with setting that first goal. I started setting a goal to work out, 3-4 times a week. I've been working out consistently since I was 16. So I guess it's a little easier because it was built into me from a young age, wrestling, track and field, like just staying active. But then, of course, started adding things on, like, let me drink a gallon of water a day. Let me wake up at 6, even though I don't really have to, especially now, since I quit the corporate job. I could wake up at 10 every day if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But part of me is like, no, let's keep some sort of consistency and routine. So I've developed my routine over time, from going from waking up early to now I track how many pages I read a day. I do a morning routine every morning. I meditate 1 or 2 times a day. But the way that I really got there is there's a guy I follow named Miles Beckler, a digital marketer. And on one of his podcasts, he talks about the perfect day exercise. And you take a whole piece of paper in your notebook and you write out your perfect day. Where would you wake up? What kind of coffee are you looking at? What's your view when you step out? Are you seeing mountains or do you see an ocean? Like, what does it look like? And as you get more and more clear and you spell out, like, I have no calls until 1 p.m. and I drink this coffee. I have an espresso machine. I go work out at 10 a.m. You start to craft your ideal life. And from doing that exercise, if I go through one of my old journals and I look at it, there's going to be a perfect day that looks like my current routine, where it's like, we live in Denver. There's mountains in the distance. When I drive to the gym, I see beautiful lakes and like snow-capped mountains. And that's like what happened today. And so that's how I bridged the gap between where I was. I had to figure out where I want to be. And then I took the necessary steps to get there.
I love it. And so when we're talking about setting yourself up, whether you're talking about the morning routine or the evening routine, what do you feel like is one more important than the other, or they go on hand in hand? And what is something there that you really enjoy for you personally, checking off every single day, whether it be the meditation, like you said, or the workout or reading? What is it for you that you really enjoy with either your morning or evening routine?
I really love the morning aspect. I guess I used to maybe be a night owl. I'm not sure. Maybe in college, I'd stayed up till 2 a.m. watching South Park or something. I remember I'd be up till 2 or 3 and I'd sleep until noon because I didn't have a class until 1 p.m. My schedule was insane. And now things have shifted where I've become the morning person. If I stay up past 10 o'clock, like New Year's Eve was so hard for me to stay up till midnight because I'm so used to just 6 o'clock a.m., 6:15 maybe I'm up. I do set an alarm, but I usually wake up like right before it anyway. And so the morning routine has become key for me. In the evening, I may occasionally meditate one more time right before bed, but that's usually time spent with my fiance. We'll watch some Netflix. We might play some Nintendo Switch. We got a couple of games recently and we both like to play together. So we might just play and relax. And then at 9:30 p.m., that's when I start to wind down. And so the morning routine has been key for me because I wake up early. I knock out the Miracle Morning, if you're familiar with that, by Hal Elrod. Savers, silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. So that takes up about an hour, and I enjoy it. I'm like, cool, I read, I wrote down my goals for today, how yesterday went. I'm going to go to the gym. And then by noon, I feel like I already knocked out like more than most people, right? Most people are just getting started. I'm already wrapping up.
I love it. What would you say to those people who have a hard time being that morning person? Someone who has a hard time motivating themselves to do like the Savers, morning routine, and they just struggle to get their engine going until later on the day, or even their night hour. Maybe they get dialed in the evenings.
Yeah. So I will start that off by saying, it's okay to be a night owl or be an early bird. It doesn't matter as long as you're not creating excuses for yourself. Cause a lot of times people will be like, I saw someone, I posted about my morning routine. Someone on Instagram was like, well, how can I do this? I have to be at work at 4:40 a.m. or something. And I just commented like, wake up 30 minutes earlier, winky face, regardless of the time you wake up at. The secret is to just wake up 15 minutes or 30 minutes earlier. And as you do that, you're going to find that you become an early person, because you're going to get tired. If you're waking up at 6 o'clock and you're used to waking up at 8 or 9, you're not going to be staying up till 2 a.m. anymore, because you're going to be exhausted, right? So that's how you slowly shift from being the night owl to being the morning person.
Wake a little bit earlier, which makes you go to bed earlier. You start to shift that.
And work out hard.
And work out hard. I think the working out obviously exhausts you, like you said, so that you're ready to crash.
If you skip the workout, you have all this energy when you're about to go to bed. You're like, I'm not tired. Well, if you go run for 30 minutes and lift heavy for like 40 minutes, you're going to probably be exhausted, especially if you're out in the sun, you're hiking a mountain. Like, try to do all that and then tell me you're not tired at 10 p.m. You're going to be exhausted.
How about those people who have a bunch of kids? It's difficult. They work all day. They wake up, they work out, then they come home, they're with the kids, they eat. They have very little time to even connect with their spouse, their significant other. Then they have to go to bed and do it all over again. They're just like barely keeping their head above water. Any tips or ideas in that regard of someone who's just stretched too thin?
Yeah. So I know that I've heard lack of time is really a lack of priorities, and I know I have to admit that I don't have any children or anything. I've got 3 pets, but I do play fetch. I take the dog out on multiple walks a day. So I make time, even though it's not necessarily a kid. I know I'm not trying to compare my animals to children that require way more attention, love, and care. But from what I've seen, I know a lot of people who have large families and they're top producers, top performers, and they'll do stuff like maybe they've got to create a home gym in one of their rooms or in their garage where they don't have to commute to a gym. They can just say, hey, can someone watch the kids for 2 seconds? I'm going to go knock out a 30-minute workout on my Peloton or, with the weights in the gym. So you're able to blend these types of things in. And then if you're seeing a big time suck in an area like cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, I haven't even done that in like all year. I started ordering meal prepped foods. And so for me, I buy 12, 15 meals at a time. I've got 3 or 4 plates in the fridge every single day. I no longer have to go grocery shopping, cook, clean. That buys me hours every week. So for those listening who have busy lives and busy families, you're stretched thin if you've got to work full time, you got to grocery shop, you got to cook for the kids, you got to pack meals. So I would kind of encourage you to maybe consider one of these meal prep options to cut out having to cook all the time. I get it. People like to cook. They might like to go work out at a certain gym, but if it's further away from you, if you got to drive 20 minutes to get there, time is the constraint here, right? So if you can buy yourself time, a little bit here, a little bit there, that's how you essentially create more time to fit in your family, fit in your church obligations and your exercise.
I think there's certain people, and I love that. I think there's certain people that are inherently just more disciplined than others. They enjoy the discipline. I think there's also certain people who have a negative association to discipline.
Right.
And they like to, whether they call themselves free spirits or whatever. I think the challenge is that sometimes they're feeling like they're pushing a rock uphill when they're just attempting to they don't like the rigidity of time blocking on their calendar or doing all things and being so structured, So have you run into that? Do you know of anyone? Is that like your fiance, let's say, or someone that or someone you've worked with, when they just have so much resistance there, but you just work with them with like the very next step? What's the very next step versus kind of talking, bigger picture as we are right now?
Yeah, I'd say the very next step, if you do that perfect day exercise and you realize like in my perfect day, I would work out at 10 a.m. instead of at 8 p.m., right? That alone was very eye-opening for me, because I'm like, gosh, I've been working out in the evenings like my whole life. And of course, now I have the flexibility to make that a morning workout. And whenever my fiance is like, hey, do you want to go to yoga with me at 7 p.m.? I'm like, 7 p.m. I'm winding down, getting ready for bed. I don't want to be sweating in power yoga. So if you do that exercise, the very next step would be, if you can use an automation software tool like Calendly. I have people book appointments through Calendly for everything from like a coffee meeting to a lunch meeting to a podcast interview. And those booking links correspond with my ideal life, right? People can't book me at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday because I'm like, no, I only take calls from 1 p.m. and on. That opens up my entire morning every single day to be flexible, where I'm not super rigid. Like I can change my workout from 10 a.m. to noon. And so I don't feel like I'm confined in any way. I still have some flexibility within those blocks of time. So I'd say the very next step is if you can sign up for something like that, or at least use Google Calendar, you can visually see your day without freaking out and being like, oh my gosh, I know I have a million things to do, but I don't know what those things are. You can see it all. You can breathe knowing, hey, I don't have anything for 3 hours. I can go to the gym now. I can go in an hour. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. And what I like about the 4-hour work week, because you mentioned it earlier, is that it got me really thinking about like, what can I actually delegate or automate
that you're doing?
What can I get other people that I'm doing? And so since then, Ben, I read it when it came out, over 10 years ago, whenever that was, I still use people over. I've got a great girl over in Nairobi. I've got another great guy down in South America that does stuff for me. But to your point, I think maybe my suggestion would be like, look at all the things that you do. A lot of times I have people time audit. Just look at all the things you do, kind of like your diet. What are you currently eating and what needs to shift? What needs to become healthier? Right. And then once I time audit everything or once they time audit everything they're doing, then you start looking at what are the low hanging fruit that you could do. And to your point, like since the beginning of COVID, I haven't shopped. I use Instacart, and exactly. To your point, I've got my meals, that I eat all the time. And it's just, and I think, people can come up with excuses of saying, well, I don't have the money for that. Well, then you need to look at ways to create more money. You have to get out of that limiting mindset,
exactly.
that there is scarcity or a lack of abundance, right? And that's a big part of it.
100%. And for me, it was an easy switch in my mind because obviously I get paid. I can increase my income. I'm in that position where I have learned like, oh, one more deal a year. If I have one more $15,000 deal, that pays for 4 meals a day for the whole year. And I can buy myself, 10 hours a week because you think of like parking at the grocery store, grabbing your card. Oh, I went to aisle 3. I forgot to get this one thing. I hate finding like seasoning or something. You're about to check out and you're like, I forgot that one thing. Now you got to go all the way through and push through people and find that one item. When you open up all that time, if you're in a position like that, I understand if you're getting paid a certain salary, it may be difficult to palate or, stomach the cost of like, oh my gosh, it's 15 grand a year or whatever for meal prep. But especially if you're in a sales-based role or a position where you can increase your income, if you just go out there and earn another $20,000, $30,000 a year, you can outsource and delegate all these other things that maybe you don't even like to do, but obviously they have to get done. We all got to eat.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think Instacart for me is what, $10 a month. That's definitely worth.
That's perfect.
Hours,
is that unlimited deliveries?
Yeah.
That's perfect. See, Instacart, or even if you have an Amazon Prime membership, you can get free delivery with Whole Foods.
Yeah. Whole Foods just, I feel like
it's expensive. Whole paycheck.
I'm always like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm like, hold up. I got one brown bag and this is like $300.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I think that's where I think I would also recommend people starting is just looking at what are the little things, that you could do to help kind of automate.
Exactly.
Calls, which is kind of like almost like a personal assistant. Anything that you do on a regular basis that is all virtual, that's online. You could find someone on Upwork or freelancer.com, or there's so many people that will do little things for you for relatively inexpensively because it's so much good money for them wherever they are outside of this first world country, and it's really supporting them as well, which I think is pretty cool. So those are all really cool tips. What has freeing up the time with all of these kind of productivity hacks been able to afford you, in terms of a more fulfilling life?
Yeah. So really at this point, I mean, I feel like I work probably 5 hours a week if I want to, and everything's automated. If someone wants to buy a house or sell a house or whatever, I do an initial call, but after they say, let's move forward, like you mentioned, assistants, virtual assistants, I've got people in the Philippines. They do everything else for me. I just send a quick text or forward an email. The paperwork gets done. I might review it for 2 seconds, like while I'm at the gym, fire it off, client signs it. So because I've outsourced and eliminated all these little decisions, you know, if you think about all the things you do in a single day, what am I going to wear? What am I going to work out today? I got to drive to the gym, got to pick up the kids from school, got to go to the grocery store, all those things that we just talked about. Yeah. If you can eliminate all the clutter, eliminate all those decisions, your clarity is extremely high. So at this point, I really am at that point where I can work on the things and do the things that I want to do. And if I don't want to do it, I can just outsource it, delegate it. If it has to get done, someone else can do it for me. So I have created this amazing life where I can choose to throw the ball for my dog at 11 a.m. for like an hour if I want to, and just sit there without any music, without anything. It's like a meditation in a way.
Yeah.
Right. Most people can't do that. They're one meeting to the next, one thing to the next all the time.
Slowing down, less is more.
Less is more.
Regards, right?
Yeah. Essentialism is a great book. If you've ever read that, or if anyone in the audience wants to check that out. Less is more, like you said, and you got to say no to some things, because I used to be a yes man. I'd say yes to everything. I'd overcommit, and then I'm like spread thin, you know? So now that I know what I want to focus on and what my goals are, I've gotten very, very good at saying no when something doesn't seem like a good fit. Hey, I'm too busy right now, or that doesn't align with what I'm trying to do. We're going back to that word alignment. And now I'm like, cool. I didn't commit to that thing that I know I'm not going to want to do because it doesn't align with what I'm working on now, which buys me time to just do nothing or meditate an extra time that day, you know?
And if you are a people pleaser, which I certainly am too, a recovering nice guy, I feel like it's
tough.
Yeah. Tough to initially start creating some of those healthy boundaries, because I think disappointing people or saying no is so challenging, you know? And so I think that's another level on top of the perfect day exercise, you know, which I have a perfect day for when I'm in town in Denver, but then I also have a perfect day when I'm on vacation. Right. And so things are a little bit obviously different, but they're also very similar. But for me, I feel like it's another level on top of that. Is like, how do I want to be? Because when I'm, to your point, saying yes, then being spread thin, then I get really resentful. I get angry. I become passive aggressive. Like all that over time, it like leaks out of me in things that are just in ways that are just so unhealthy. And that's not the way that I ultimately want to be. Even if I had the perfect day, but I'm still angry because I'm saying yes to all these things, that doesn't work, you know? So
right. It leads to burnout.
Yeah, 100%. And feeling like you're kind of living this imposter syndrome, you know, where you're just kind of putting on a happy face, like you said, kind of faking your way through stuff, but you're really, really unhappy. And I think that's a big part of the Becoming Kings podcast, is really helping guys look at what does it mean for you to live as a king, you know? And for some guys, it might be living in that high rise and having those suits and, you know, driving that car and having that great corner office. And other guys, it might be like living out in the country and having, you know, animals and spending time hiking with the kids. Like there's no right or wrong way. It just depends on who you are and what really, really makes you happy. Right.
Absolutely.
And it seems like you spend a good amount of time really dialing that in to where you're enjoying it. Obviously, I think it never ends. You'll probably be, as you get older, you just keep refining it, and values will change. Right. So how much is this and your lifestyle impacted your relationship? Is your fiance totally on board? Does she do the same thing? Does she think you're crazy? I say that kind of tongue in cheek. How does that work within the relationship itself?
That's a great question. So it is a little bit of an interesting dynamic, because I'm like, take risks, you know, backpack in Asia for 1 month, let's go skydiving or scuba diving type of person. She's like, I'm never going to go skydive, or like, it's going to take a lot for me to jump out of a plane. She does have a job as a CPA or as an accountant. She's working on getting her CPA. So she works at a firm, and that provides a little more stability too, in a way where like, I'm like, I joke like, you're my sugar mama. If I don't close any deals, you know, you're going to help us out. But it also gives me that peace of mind where it's not all on my shoulders, because I know she's getting a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. So we balance each other out. I live life on the edge. I'm okay not knowing the next time I'm going to get paid, and be like, whatever, I'm going to talk to somebody and manifest it. I truly believe in that. And she's more like, hey, we got to start putting money aside for the wedding. Let's like save $200 a month here and there. And I'm like, babe, I'm going to close like 5 deals before then. Like, it'll be cool. You know, that'll pay for the wedding. I don't know. I don't know how yet. I don't have the leads yet, but they're on their way. So I think it's good to just have that healthy balance, because if we were both crazy and like risky and didn't know when we're going to get paid, that might be a little more stressful on the relationship than the current dynamic we have set up.
I think it's good. I think it shows that not so much the opposites attract, but there has to be a polarity between man and woman, and or between man and woman and woman. It's just more of the masculine and the feminine expression, you know. And I've met a lot of women who are you know, especially here in Colorado, who are big time risk takers. And I've met a lot of men who are very, very connected to security, and they don't want to take risks.
It really is just a personal choice, right? Like a disc 100%. Profile or Enneagram. I recommend people figure out and take those personality tests to like figure out what you are, you know. Like, I know I'm a risk taker. I like novelty. I get bored fast doing the same thing. So me being in an office doing the same thing for like 5 months was driving me nuts. Whereas here it's like, we're doing a podcast today. Tomorrow I might make a reel on Instagram. The next day I might go to lunch with somebody I meet at the gym just because I have the time and I see that they're also in real estate. You know, I kind of love that. I don't know what's going to happen today, but let's figure it out type of thing.
Totally. I love that. And I'm very similar in that sense. And
flexible.
I appreciate just the spontaneity and adventure.
It's fun.
Of that. But then there's other areas where again, to the discipline and the routine, that's where I find my sense of like stability and groundedness, right?
100%.
I find that a lot through my health. So I think that's the key, because I do feel like people who are, I have met a lot of men who are bored. They are just tired and kind of burnt out with the mundane, right? But then they, rather than actually going out and living their life as an adventure in terms of taking on a new career or traveling the world or doing whatever thing that really is scary but really make them happy, they find more toxic ways of creating that adventure in their lives, which might
alcohol,
be
going out,
alcohol, porn, gambling, things that you know are ultimately going to lead themselves to a lot more of a greater challenge down the road, you know? So I think to your point is you gotta create just more availability in your bandwidth. Like you said, in your time, you got to prioritize different things, got to get clear. And I think this is an important point as we're kind of wrapping things up, that a lot of times this can be overwhelming for people that are listening to this. And I think that's why it's important to get yourself a mentor, or you have something on your website, don't you? Like a free tool or something like that they can use for productivity.
Yeah. So I have like a quick free productivity guide just on some of the things that I've done to kind of multiply time or create time is the phrase that I like to use. Cause a lot of people, that's their number one excuse of why they don't work out more, why they don't do this, why they don't read in the morning. I don't have time. That's what everyone says, right? So like I mentioned earlier, lack of time is really just a lack of priorities. And again, to be fair, I don't have 3 kids or 4 kids or anything like that. I don't got to take anybody to school. But I still have created the time in my schedule through systems, automation, delegation, waking up an hour earlier, right? So if you go to chrisbello.com/free, that's where everyone can download that free productivity guide, as well as just following me on Instagram, chrisbello_. I'm constantly sharing what I'm doing. Quick tip. Hey, here's how you automate emails. So if you're getting newsletters that you want to get, you can automatically mark it as read from your main inbox and forward it to a different email address so that you're not like, oh my gosh, I got 200 emails this week that I kind of want to read, but which ones in here are important for real estate or whatever you do, right? So I would encourage people to check that out, but I appreciate you letting me jump on here and kind of name drop that too.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. I think I would highly encourage whomever is watching or listening to this to just check you out, follow you on Instagram, go to your website, get that free tool and just see where it takes you. And I think sometimes if it can feel overwhelming, I think it takes one step, which is maybe just following you, getting that free PDF or whatever it is, and then just taking one action at a time, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it is overwhelming because, like we said earlier, we've overcommitted and we're so spread thin. So less is more. As you start to remove things from the calendar, say no to that next thing that you don't really want to do. You don't have to go to all the parties, the weddings, the funerals. Like, really evaluate: do I even know this person? Like, why are we going to this wedding? Like, I don't even know who this person is. You don't have to go, and there you go. You save yourself a trip, a headache. Like, what's the gift that we got to get? Just remove all the decisions that you have in your life as much as possible, especially the little ones. And you buy your sanity back and your clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing so many of these good nuggets with the listeners. I'm excited this is one of many. I'll have you on as a guest, I'm sure, but I appreciate you, man. And
likewise. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, feel free to follow chrisbello.com, right? Or
Chris
Bello on Instagram. There
it
is. There it is. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. We'll catch up with you on the next episode.
Thanks, Johnny.
Cheers, guys.
Sounds good.
See you guys.